folks, welcome to Metal Wani and Metal Nation Radio. This is your host, Vitek, with the majestic, amazing drummer, Dirk Verbueren. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing good, thanks, man. Glad to be here.
Fantastic. Now, it's been a journey of around 25 years, right from 1990 till 2015. You've been behind that gigantic drum kit, kicking ass each and every album, each and every show, and dominating the metal world by your balls. So, how do you feel about this success?
um, Man, I don't know. I guess it's been longer than I thought about.
That's right.
But yeah, no, I'm just, I just feel happy that I get to play drums. I'm a very fortunate person, and I when I first started out 25 years ago, I couldn't even have imagined in my wildest dreams that I would be doing this for a living one day, and that I would be
True.
doing working with all these amazing musicians. So I'm just very blessed, man.
That's really awesome. Now, you do session works, you conduct clinics, etc. Where do you draw most of your inspiration for your drum parts, for soil work in general, or let's say from other metal drummers or completely different sources?
It's obviously all the drummers I listen to and all the music I listen to influences me. But in the end, what it comes down to is, I've learned a number of things on drums over the years. I was fortunate to go to a music school when I was 18 years old. I was there for 18 months
Mhm.
doing drums all day long with a bunch of awesome teachers in different genres of music. And I learned a lot of different techniques there, and just took in a bunch of influences from other students, and just different styles of music. And in the end, what I draw my inspiration from is just the communion with the instrument, and the
Right.
feeling, the love I have for rhythm. It just kind of dictates, what happens, because I never know when I sit down to, let's say, record drums for somebody, what's going to come out and what I'm going to come up with. It's really up to the moment, and I try to just fuse myself into the music and find the right place as a drummer in the song or in that part, and just let the the magic happen.
Absolutely true. Now, you are an inspiration for n number of drummers out there in heavy metal right now, but who in your mind has been like some of the best drummers from where you're inspired when we talk about heavy metal today?
Oh man, in metal there are so many awesome drummers, of course, and it would be impossible to list them all. But some of the people that have really blown me away over the years, would be, well, the biggest inspiration at the beginning was definitely Dave Lombardo from
Hmm.
Slayer.
Right.
He really, his groove really kind of motivated me to become a drummer in the first place. And then over the years, there have been people like Sean Reinert, Gene Hoglan, George Colias, Derek Roddy, and many, many more. Tony Laureano. I mean, there's tons of drummers that just have blown me away, and really inspired me to become better. Also a lot of non-metal drummers as well.
Awesome, because last night I was having a chat with Gavin Harrison, and while
Nice.
explaining about his drum patterns, he did tell me about you that he listens to Meshuggah, he listens to Soilwork, and he was talking about Thomas Hawkes as well as your drum parts. So I was just wondering whether have you ever got any inspiration from Gavin?
Absolutely. I mean, I love Gavin's work with Porcupine Tree, and some of his other projects as well. And he's definitely a big influence. I mean, he has a control over the dynamics and the precision of the ghost notes and stuff that's just out of this world. So it's really an honor to hear actually that he even knows who I am. I didn't know that, but that's amazing. I mean, yeah, I love his work, and obviously Thomas has been an amazing influence as well. I spent a lot of time over the years, just sitting down and just playing Meshuggah songs, just because they're so not well, they're great songs, but also they're so interesting drum wise.
Right.
So both of them, have definitely, influenced me. And it's funny because, this kind of shows you that we're all, it's a small world, and we're all kind of influencing and pushing each other, which I think
True.
is a beautiful thing.
Absolutely true. Now, very few people know that you started off with a violin player, and then you eventually helped you play guitar as well. So, has playing the guitar helped you with the drumming?
Absolutely. I think, especially being in a band and kind of having a knowledge and a feeling about some of the other instruments in the band is always a helpful thing. And I don't really know the music theory in the sense of like melody that well, but I can write and read rhythm really well. So that helps me as well. And so when I work with people like, for example, Sylvain and Scarve and Soilwork and you know, other people I work with, it's really helpful for me to kind of have that background, you know, and understand what they could play and not. And even though Sylvain, by the way, always blows me away because that guy can play anything, but but you know, yeah, it's good. And I'm really happy that my parents, you know, kind of encouraged me at a young age to pick up the violin, and because that's really what got me started into the music world.
Right. So do you still shred on violin?
I don't, man. I wish I could say yes. I wish I, you know, now being, you know, all these years older, I wish I had kind of kept up with it. But I stopped that around age 13, 14. I just kind of became disinterested and started playing guitar and got into metal and then picked up drums. And, you know, but I still play guitar. So I wrote a song actually for the upcoming Soilwork album. And I wrote for the previous one as well, which ended up being on the Beyond the Infinite EP. And, you know, I write a lot of songs for my grindcore band, Ben C, and I even record guitars for that as well. I'm a pretty crappy guitar player, but, you know, I just kind of pull it off enough for Ben C. So it's, yeah, it's still something I enjoy.
That's awesome. Now, recently you uploaded a drum video of, I don't know, maybe it was a small take from Soilwork's upcoming album. So I noticed that, you know, over the period of time, you know, I've seen you guys live, I've seen the footage on YouTube. It's very, I don't know, I don't remember you using the 2 double bass kicks, the bass drums.
Yes, you're right. That was the very first time, at least since I just started out, that I used 2 kick drums. When I first started out, my parents bought me a small second-hand jazz kit, which had 1 kick drum. And then, you know, since I was so much into metal and I didn't have a double pedal either, my friend at the time in school told me, hey, I have this old, you know, some pieces of a drum kit lying around. Do you want the kick drum so you can have 2 kick drums? And so I played that for a little bit. And then eventually I got a double pedal probably, you know, within a few months. And I never looked back, you know, I was always like, well, the double pedal is easier. It takes up way less space, of course. Right. And I was just used to it, so I never really thought about it. But then last year I played a couple of shows filling in for Frost in Satyricon. And so I spoke with Satyr about it, and he said, you know, you should reconsider because, you know, 2 kick drums, you know, give you a really nice option with the sound because you can tune them kind of differently. And it creates a lot more dynamics when you do double kick rolls. And that kind of stuck with me. And I listened back to the Satyricon albums, and I was like, yeah, you know, it's true that you can really hear this very natural sound. So when we went to the studio earlier this year with Soilwork, I used the studio kit there, the Tama kit that they have, beautiful kit, and they had 2 kicks. So I was like, let's do it. So that's how it happened.
That's awesome. I guess you guys are, you know, nailing it in the Fascination Street studios?
Actually, yeah, that studio where we recorded for the new album was called Ghost Ward. Okay. And the mixing and mastering will happen at Fascination Street. So, but Ghost Ward and Fascination Street are closely connected.
Right, and Jans is taking care of, you know, everything this time as well.
He's going to do the mix and master, and David Castillo is the guy who recorded everything. So he's been working with us now for the past 2 months on and off to do drums and guitars, etc. And so yeah, he's worked with a lot of bands like Opeth, Catatonia, Bloodbath, great guy. Awesome. And then yeah, Jens is going to do the mix again, and yeah, so we're really looking forward to the result.
He's going to put his magic.
Yes, absolutely.
Fantastic. Now, what's the status? Is the recording being done, or it's still under progress?
It's still underway. I know that Bjorn has been doing his vocals now for a little while, so I think we're nearing those being done. And then I haven't heard any of the keyboards yet. I know Sven's been working on those. Yeah, he you know, he basically starts like laying down his idea. He kind of works on his own, you know, is the best way I can put it. Like we get together. I obviously start by recording the drums, then guitars and bass follow, and then once we have drums, guitars, and bass, then Bjorn starts recording his vocals, and Sven starts working on his parts because he really tries to kind of complement everything. So, right. But he's also tightly talking with Sylvain and David about, you know, because when songs are being written, some parts that are played on guitar on the demo will be destined for keyboards, for example. So they discuss all that. Yeah, so it should be done if all goes well within the next few weeks. Hopefully, we have some shows coming up now, so we're actually going to get together to rehearse in a few days. I'm flying to Sweden, and so yeah, it's all a big craziness right now.
Awesome. So probably end of a year release or maybe early next year.
No, we're thinking definitely this fall, because we want to hit the road in the fall. And so we're definitely planning on bringing it out, right after the summer, hopefully.
Fantastic. Now, speaking of the fact of some of the Soilworks, Swedish contemporaries like In Flames and Dark Tranquility, they're getting more melodic, they're getting more experimental in their sound, while you guys, getting more intense. Now, what's there in the Swedish air that, these kind of different appearances and then, the vision in the mind is coming into the picture?
That's a good question. It's not something that we really planned on, even though I have to say that, Sylvain and myself being in the band, we obviously both like intense, fast, crazy stuff like we did with Scarf, and we hope to do again with Scarf. So, it's probably a little bit of us being there and kind of pushing for that kind of stuff and writing that kind of stuff. And then for the rest, because David and Bjorn are also a big part of the songwriting, and Sven as well. I think it's just the feeling right now. I think it's just kind of like what's going on in our lives. We actually had a lot of family drama happening recently. Several band members lost family members as we were getting into the studio and during the studio recording. And, and the process leading up to the studio itself, when we wrote the album, there was just kind of this vibe, I guess. And, it could be totally different the next time around, but this time that's just what happened. So it's not like we sat down and we're like, oh, we have to go back and play old school. Right. It's just, because that's not how we roll, we just write what comes out. And that happens to be, there happens to be this kind of dark undertone. I mean, it's kind of hard to put it into words, I guess, because everything you got to say, it sounds cliche and like typical. But the best way I can put it is that there's just kind of like an inner darkness right now that seemed to have to be expressed through the music.
Absolutely. Now, since you said that there have been some certain issues coming up while you guys were in the studio, so fans can expect more like a personal journey on this upcoming album?
Absolutely. I think I can't speak too much for it yet because I haven't read any of the lyrics yet, but I do know that the lyric I'm writing for my song and then the themes that Bjorn has talked to me about, it's definitely going to be very personal and connected with death for sure, because of everything that's been happening and that we've all been through. So it's going to be cool. I mean, we're definitely expressing it in a positive way in that sense, because it's things that at our age, we're all like in our mid 30s up to mid 40s for the band members, and so it's kind of like what happens in life. You start losing key people in your family, and we're all kind of facing that, and so luckily the music is there to be a sort of outlet.
Express. That's right. Now let's get back to your journey. I mean, most of your students definitely want to learn metal and definitely want to learn that Dirk blast. But and I'm sure you must be tired of people asking you like, how do you play fast? How do you nail those parts, very smoothly? But as a drummer, you know that it's not always about fast. It's always about maintaining that balance between, let's say, the groove and metal. So what do you do to maintain that balance and as sort of feedback to the fans who just want to play fast every time?
I mean, first of all, I understand them, because when I started out, I only wanted to play blast beats. I think the first thing I ever played was a blast beat, so I tried at least.
That's right.
But, so I understand, I'm totally obsessed with playing fast, and I love it. But I think that you're very right in mentioning the balance. I think for me the key is that if you want to be able to do all these different things, such as play fast, play technical, etc., you have to take the time to learn the vocabulary, which is technique, which is phrasing, which is dynamics, which is rudiments. Like all these things are kind of like the words that are going to constitute your vocabulary as a drummer, and some of these things take many, many, many years to master, especially, for example, playing proper fast on the double kicks requires a lot of technical work, and it requires a lot of boring, like sitting through practicing single strokes every day for an hour or whatever, and then you don't see any progress for 5 months. and you're like, what am I doing? And then eventually the progress happens because your muscles start to build and your muscle memory starts to kick in, and then all of a sudden you can play a little bit faster and be comfortable with it. And so, you know, that's the key message to anybody, any drummer or any musician who wants to be at a top level. You know, it's kind of like, you know, with drumming, especially like being an athlete, you have to put in a lot of hard work continually. You can't stop. You can't just be like, oh, now I'm taking a break for 3 months because I know everything. And then, because then if you go back, you're going to realize how much you've lost.
True.
So it's always practice, always stay on top of it, always play a lot, and be very patient.
Absolutely true. How many hours in a day do you jam? I mean, do you practice?
It varies. It really depends on what I'm doing. When I'm recording here, which is a lot of the time when I'm not on the road with Soilwork or working with them, I'm usually doing session recordings here in my crawling studio, and you know, I try to do a song per day, you know, when I'm doing that. So then I'll probably drum at least 3-4 hours to get a song done. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less, depending on how difficult the song is. But something like that, and then on top of that, there's just my personal practice, which I try to get in a little bit of that every day. You know, so yeah, I mean, the most practice I really did was when I just came out of the music school. Then I really sat down and did 3-4 hours of exercises like daily, you know. But I only kept that up for a few years because it gets tough after a while mentally. You just want to go out and play. So so now it's more of a balance between me having fun playing and practicing.
Absolutely right, Dirk. Now, you've been, you know, constantly traveling from Europe to States and back to Europe. So, you know, this sort of splitting your time between two different continents, what differences did you feel in terms of, let's say, music in general for you as a musician and also as a fan?
Interesting question. You know, I growing up in Europe, especially, you know, I was born and raised in Belgium, but then I moved to France with my parents as a young teenager, and you know, France was kind of very closed to the music I was into at the time. You know, I was fortunate that my parents lived near Paris, so luckily Paris had a lot of the tours that were coming through, and so I managed to see a lot of the bands, you know, that I enjoyed: Morbid Angel, Suffocation, you know, Nocturnus, you name it, like all those, you know, the bands from that era that really influenced me. Morgoth, saw them a bunch of times.
Awesome.
You know, Napalm Death, Carcass, all those bands. That was like, you know, early to mid 90s, but outside of Paris, you know, I mean, there were maybe a few cities that had, you know, some shows coming through, but in general, France seemed very not so open to metal music, because I think the older generations just didn't get it at all. And and so, you know, when I moved here, now almost 10 years ago, you know, which I already knew from visiting, but it really struck me how accepted metal music is here, and how much more part of the kind of like the fabric of the community it is than it was in France. And in the meantime, you know, with Gojira being so successful, it's changed. And I think the newer generation growing up is definitely more into like heavy music. So it's changing there as well, for a better place. But, you know, yeah, that would be the biggest difference that I felt.
Awesome, because I was just about to ask about the bands like Gojira and Benighted as well from France.
Yes.
Yeah, yes, so they've raised the bar in terms of like showing to the people that it's not really always about bands coming from Germany or from Poland, but they can also be metal bands from France.
Exactly. You know, it's hard because, you know, there's some kind of mental prejudice, I think, you know, that we all have, including myself, against certain countries where for some reason, you know, if you're from Sweden or Norway, let's say, instantly it's credible, like, because somehow metal just fits in with the image we have in our minds from these cold northern countries, and there's been so many great bands coming from those countries, you know, also Finland and Denmark to an extent as well, that you just know it's going to be something good and tasteful, you know, for the most part. And then, you know, for some reason with some other countries that feeling is very different, and France, I think, was for a long time had that stigma where, you know, yeah, French metal, whatever, you know, it's half decent. But, you know, even though there were a lot of great bands like Loud Blast, Suppuration, Massacre, you know, Merciless, I mean, there were some great bands in France at the time when I was a teenager, but they just never really broke through, unfortunately. Right. And Gojira and to an extent Benighted really changed that. So it's good, when that happens. I'm glad, and it's kind of unfortunate that Scarf didn't get to continue on our path, but we're still planning on doing a new album, and awesome. Even though we won't be as active a touring band as we were at the time, no doubt about that, but we still have some music in us. So
that's awesome. So what else is cooking right now? I mean, of course you're doing sessions. So is this something that fans should be aware that, okay, Dirk is gonna kill on some album? So what album is it?
Well, there's not that much stuff I can talk about, unfortunately, right now, because a lot of that stuff is still under wraps. But I'm doing a bunch of recordings right now, and one of them I did recently here in a local studio in North Hollywood is a great album, because it's not actually metal music, it's fusion music, and it has a lot of amazing people playing on it. So when that one's coming out, I think fans will be really stoked about it. And awesome. I'd like to talk about my drum lessons also, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So I'm doing since last year, I'm doing these instructional videos on my website, and they're called Dirk Blasts, and it's awesome because it allows you from anywhere in the world to take drum lessons with me. It's a yearly subscription. The school year runs kind of from July till the next July, so we're kind of 75% through this first school year, but people can sign up, and for $80 you get 24 lessons. So it's only like $3.3 a lesson or something, very cheap. And every lesson is a video, comes with sheet music, and I share everything I know about drums and drumming and being in a band and using electronic drums, etc. So there's a lot of cool perks. For example, there's a private Facebook group for all my students, so everybody who signs up gets to join that as well. And awesome. You can ask me questions, we can discuss things, we can share videos, talk about exercises. If you encounter any issues with any of my lessons, I'll help you out. So it's a great thing for people that aren't nearby and that can't take in-person lessons with me or don't want to do Skype lessons. They can just download these videos and work on their own. So yeah, Dirk Blast, check it out on dirkverbueren.com.
Awesome. Now, Dirk, do you plan to do some DVDs like how Gavin does or George Colias does? So any such drum DVDs for bands, for fans actually to grab it and learn from you?
Well, I would love to, it just the opportunity hasn't really arisen in the sense of me having time really to sit down and do it and find a good partner to do it with. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of why Dirk Blast was created, because I do want to share, what I've learned over the years. I mean, having an education as a drummer was extremely important to me. I was so fortunate to work with these awesome teachers in different styles when I was in France at the Music Academy International. And I know how key that was in my life as a drummer, to be able to become what I am today. So I want to give that back. And because the DVD thing kind of wasn't really unlocking in the way I would hope, I thought, well, I saw that people like George are also doing online lessons, and Derek, Roddy, and I was like, this is probably a good way to do it as well, because then people can just, kind of stay connected with me and learn at their own pace, and ask me questions. Another thing I do is my students can say, hey, can you tell us about this, or I would like to learn about that, and then I make a video for them about that. So it's kind of a more interactive experience versus a DVD where you buy it and then you sit at home and you watch it and that's it.
Yeah, absolutely true, Dirk. A very good insight of the small molecules in your brain today. So I'm very honored.
Oh, thank you so much. Awesome questions.